Welcome to Jurassic World.
Guests, welcome to the Jurassic World Minute, where we visit Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. Please no tapping on the glass, it disrupts the animals. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And today we're here to discuss minute 17 of Jurassic World. But before we get to that, David, we are reopening the chapter on the Indominus Rex here and the Indominus Siblings over at Jurassic-Pedia.com. We went to this article when we first seen the exit start of the film. We're back here now when we learn that the Indominus ate one of its ate its sister.
She was obviously the top predator of the two. I suppose that is why they created two in the first place, in case one of them did not survive, you know?
I think it may have been genetic degradation or something like that was what they thought the one may go out with, not the fact that one's going to eat the other. Which makes you wonder why they paired them up and had them in the one enclosure to start with. But one thing I did want to bring up here and have a look more closely at is at this time when Simon Masrani goes to visit the pen, he doesn't know that there's no longer two, just the one, which may give a little bit more reason why he's not so quick to just shoot it later when it escapes, which we will get to there, where it's a $28 million asset. Where now he's probably spent 56 million on two, and he's only got one left.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure Hoskins and that know. I just wonder why it never got to Masrani. But anyway, so there's a lot more there on the Indominus and Paddock 11, which we're seeing now.
Yeah, and we're also going to be going into some of the concept art for the Paddock 11, which will be discussed next minute.
Yep. So head over to Jurassic-Pedia.com and check out that article and so many more new ones going up every week.
How's my park doing?
Great. We're up 2.5% over last year, a bit lower than our initial projection.
No. How is it doing? Are the guests having fun? Are the animals enjoying life?
Well, guest satisfaction is steady in the low 90s. We don't have a way to measure the animals' emotional experience.
Sure you do. You can see in their eyes, right?
Of course.
Okay. Now show me my new dinosaur.
David, ready to get into minute 17?
Yep.
As when in minute 16 of Jurassic World, Masrani and Claire had arrived at the Indominus Rex closure. And Claire was telling Masrani that they'd planned to open in May, but asset containment wanted the walls built higher. She's bigger than they expected. As we open on minute 17, Simon Masrani puts his hands on his hips and looks up at the large wall and says that's a good sign, talking to himself. At the 5-second mark, we cut inside an observation room. As Claire continues, we hit a few speed bumps early on. We began to anticipate where the food was coming from, and one of the handlers almost lost an arm. And the others threatened to quit if she couldn't guarantee their safety. At the 20-second mark, Claire stops in front of a monitor and starts tapping on the screen. Masrani walks up to the window and says, "So she's intelligent then?" Claire replies, "For a dinosaur." Masrani looks past Claire and points. "And that?" we pan to a section of the observation room window that's spiderwebbed and cracked. Claire hesitates and says she tried to break the glass. With a look of horror on Masrani's face, I like her spirit. At the 38-second mark, heavy footfalls and the sound of cracking foliage averts their attention out in the enclosure itself. Thick, heavily forested ferns block the full view of the Indominus, but we can just see glimpses of her walking around in the underbrush. And as the minute ends, Masrani steps closer towards the glass and comments, "Oh, she's white. You never told me she was white." As we open on minute 17, Simon's still standing, looking up at the enclosure from outside after taking the helicopter ride there, and in front of him we could see sort of a lot of building materials there and crates, and we get a Knack construction logo on one of the crates, which we know Knack and Timac Construction were used to build Jurassic World. I'm pretty sure this is the only time we get to see one of their logos in the film itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't even think I actually noticed that on previous viewings.
Which is weird because we get the crane in a couple of minutes' time feeding the Irex, and there's no logos on that whatsoever. None of the construction equipment, even the Chevy work truck we see later on when it escapes. There's no. Yeah. Well, I suppose they wouldn't really need to publicise the construction firm if they're working on a multi-billion-dollar project.
Yeah.
But as this scene ends, Masrani sort of standing there with his hands on his hips and just says it's a good sign, seemingly to himself, which the novel definitely explains more why that line's there. I just don't know why the whole bit of dialogue that I have in the novel's not in the film itself, but we'll get there a bit later. We cut to Claire opening a door to a small observation room, and she continues to talk to him. We hit a few speed bumps early on. It began to anticipate where the food would come from. She gives the technician in there is sort of near the panel, and she sort of gives him a little wave of a hand as to scram, which I thought was a little bit rude as she walks into the room here, but she continues, one of the handlers almost lost an arm, and the others threatened to quit if I couldn't guarantee their safety. I wonder if this is a little callback to Jurassic Park, where the big one had the raptors attacking the feeders when they went to feed the raptors in the holding pen.
I'm pretty sure it is. In fact, it almost reminds me of the opening as well, where the raptors basically had to be moved to this extra secure enclosure because of that reason, you know?
Yeah.
Basically, I can imagine the rest of the workers going on strike on Hammond after Joffrey died, you know?
But at least Hammond was using Costa Rican labour from what we see there. So I don't know how quick that'd be to get onto the OH&S and all that sort of stuff. But I wonder how long ago this happened, because surely you're not feeding the animal by hand when it's 30 feet long.
Yeah.
If you are, you're probably up on top of the fence throwing food over the fence wall to her, or I don't think you're putting your hand through. And we talked about this a couple of minutes ago when we first got to the Irex enclosure, just what their idea was for feeding the animal once the stadium was all up and running. But we're going to continue that later on too when we get the crane, because that's even worse. But maybe that's another reason too why we haven't got any sort of local Costa Ricans working there, because they realised how unsafe it was, and they all pulled out. We'll let the white people come down from the States and take the jobs. They look through the glass walls, looking out in the enclosure, and Claire starts playing around with one of the monitors on a stand here, and watching a YouTube video the other day, these stands are no longer at the Irex enclosure in Hawaii, but they seem to be sort of like demo stands you'd find in a like an Apple Genius store or something, Apple Store, advertising iPads or that sort of thing.
And they don't even look like they're even secured to the ground. They were probably just dummy screens that they had. I mean, you never actually get to see them close enough, except for that one time when the construction worker guy there is playing around with trying to track its thermal signature later in the movie. Also weird.
Oh, go.
I was going to say, there's also weird because it looks like there's an administrative or some kind of janitorial or something like that. There's like a little door here off to the side from the main entrance which we know from the construction of this structure, it doesn't lead to anywhere. There's nothing on the other side of that door except for the wall, you know? So that's kind of an interesting choice to have that there.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a work in progress. If they got this small office here with the monitoring equipment in it, if this is eventually going to be the control room for in Verizon Stadium, and they're going to add more structures to the outside later on.
It could have been.
But it's still weird that they put a door in there when they easily put it in later on, as you said. And even Claire playing around with this tablet or monitor on the stand. Obviously, it's just a playthrough of, or it might even be CG of some of the scans we see on the screens later on. But she's sort of just looking for. I don't know if she's trying to see where it is so she can let Masrani know or anything like that. But it seems weird that she's here playing around with it and not sort of talking to him out the side of her mouth as well. But they look out through the glass. I'd said that. Masrani says so she's intelligent then, and Claire agrees for a dinosaur. Again, not having any idea about the animals being actual animals, not assets. And that's when Masrani asks Nat, pointing to a spiderweb of cracked glass in one of the windows. And Claire follows his gaze and shows the crack, and she says it tried to break the glass. Which, the way this enclosure is set up, it's surprising it hasn't tried to break the glass more often. Especially when this is at its head height in there. We'll get to some of the concept art next minute, but a lot of the concept art for the Indominus enclosure has sort of a moat or drop-down embankments around the wall itself, so it can't really get to the wall. Whereas here, I think in the paddock itself, it's only about 10 feet off the ground or something, the actual observation room in the windows. So
yeah, it is. It's not very high off the ground. The movie makes it look like it's much higher up than it really is. It's, like you said, only 10, 15 feet.
And even the concept art has bars across the windows. You'd have to be, even if it was toughened glass, thick toughened glass, that still has to be inside a frame that can hold it and the impact of a big animal.
Well, it's also interesting because this whole area, this whole viewing paddock area, or viewing box area, is a lot more secured in the concept art in general. It's got spotlights aimed at the area around the rim, and then looks like electric prods around the edge of a big pit that's not even there at all in the movie.
Yeah. I wonder if it just come down to how much money they had to build the set, or because even something like some floodlights on the walls or something, and we still question why it's got such a big door, a dinosaur-sized door.
Well, the other thing is that this set they only built like this corner of. They only built these two walls of it, whereas the concept art showed that it was just meant to be a large octagonal building. You know.
Hex isn't hex 6 hexagonal?
No. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. 6 sides. Yeah, you're right. It's only supposed to be hexagonal.
Before we started recording them on my fingers, 6. And what is it? Hex. I'm trying to work it out myself.
What's that?
Oh, I was just going to say we got some photos from Real Tours Hawaii that they took over there before and post filming. We'll post up on the Facebook page and the socials with the set itself. But was something else you wanted to add?
No, actually, though, I do remember that this scene that we got concept art for, where it was basically a worker checking out the enclosure there. I do remember us getting that as like a teaser up into the movie. They had obviously cropped out the Indominus herself. They didn't want us to see what the design was yet until they had been ready for that reveal. But I do remember there's the concept art that's here up on Behind the Gates, the Facebook page here, with the worker checking the iPad and somebody else at a terminal over in the background. And you just see the glass box with the bars over the windows.
Oh, okay, so that was released as a bit of a teaser, was it? Without the
there. Yeah, I do remember that.
Oh, okay. Because I seem to remember the one. Well, it might have just been the internal shot, looking at the at the windows from inside the pen, and it sort of looked like it was concept art, but then someone took a photo, I think, of the actual shot as well.
Well, yeah, I do remember that somebody took a photo and of inside the box. Somebody has snuck onto the set after they'd been done with it, and took a photo of inside the box and compared it to the concept art. And basically, like, this is what it is, you know?
Yeah. But it seems a bit odd here too. Masrani seems to be the only one that's seeing the danger. Claire's like, oh yeah, it hit the glass. It's probably smart for a dinosaur, and thinking it's just another animal. And we see in a couple minutes' time, away from the raptors and Masrani, so is the only one concerned about them being loose on the island as well. We get the line next minute about Hammond having the best engineers, but no one seems to think the carnivores would need to be worried about it. Or be worried about, I should say. And it continues sort of through the film as well.
I think the interesting thing here is you compare this paddock here to the raptor paddock, which we'll see in a couple minutes from now, and you just notice how overgrown it is, and that it's just obviously nobody's been in there for lawn maintenance, and I don't think anybody's been able to get in there for lawn maintenance, unlike the raptor enclosure, where they've obviously been able to they've been able to bushwhack the jungle back into place, so that there's part of it that's jungle and a part of it's that open space. Evidently, this would have been the Indominus Arena that we would have seen as an attraction, and you wouldn't have really gotten much of an attraction if the entire thing was filled with trees. You know? Yeah,
well, we're going to mention the heavily forested predator paddocks in a couple of minutes' time, but yeah, I know why it's here, because one, there's no back to the set, and two, it's cheap for CG. You don't have to show the animal itself, you just need to show some trees rustling.
Well, I mean, the weird thing is you do get to see like little glimpses of the Indominus herself. It's kind of like that classic monster movie reveal. You only get kind of glimpses of the monster before eventually they just show all about midway through the movie. You know? And so you do kind of like get glimpses of, all of a sudden the thigh appears, and it's like, and it's almost like that they camouflaged it, you know? That she's using her camouflage ability already. And we just, because all of a sudden she goes from one frame, all you see is jungle, and the next frame, you can see like her thigh, and then we get the glimpse of the the back of the hand or the head, and then we get the close up in the eye in next minute here.
Yeah, but I reckon Masrani must have eagle vision, because I've watched the minute over a couple of times, and yeah, you can see her moving in the background, but I would never have thought she was white, especially when we get a head come in the shadows looking forward in that eye. But
I think that is meant that they're seeing that in the course of the movie themselves, the characters are seeing more than what the audience is seeing. The audience has not yet been revealed the Indominus Rex, you know?
Yeah. We'll return to this in a minute. Simon stares open eyes at the crack and says he likes her spirit. He likes the fact that she's damaging his assets.
I think he's just impressed, and he's basically realizing he's having a Gennaro moment where he's going to make a fortune with this attraction.
Yeah, well, that's when we get this attraction make her presence felt. We get a growl and a bit of a footfall from out in the enclosure, and that pulls the attention away out in the enclosure itself. And as we look out the trees, we can see him swaying, and the footsteps can be heard. There's probably some poorly paid extras down there just shaking leaves and bushes to make it look like the animal's moving through there. Although it wouldn't surprise me if that's all done by CG now anyway, just make the tree move.
Yeah, it could have been.
But yeah, through the trees you can sort of barely make out the animal's back as it's moving. As we were saying before, probably more so the fact that it's trying to, just testing out its camouflage ability as it's moving from through the foliage. And well, we didn't go into the heavily forested pens. We had the same thing with the raptors in the holding pen at the start. Like, don't make a pen you can't see predators in. Don't give a predator a place to hide.
Yeah.
having a little, just a little patch of trees, something. What would we say? It was going to be 50 feet. So you're not going to you're not going to be able to have heavily forested enough for this thing to be able to hide completely in there, especially once you get the stadium seating and everything up. You can't have trees that the fans or the spectators can't see through the foliage to see the animal. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of the animal hiding and not a lot of cheering from the audience. I'm sure the whole animal rights thing, if it did exist in this world, they'd be saying, well, the animals need somewhere to retreat to get away from the screaming kids and everything else. But we're going to get it when we get to the raptors in a minute as well.
An extinct animal brought back to life has no rights. It exists because we made it. We patented it. We own it.
Yeah, and if Hoskins is saying that, then that's probably what the general feel is at Jurassic World.
Sorry, I was watching The Lost World the other night.
Oh yeah, I know. It's the Ludlow Lions. Just we get exactly the same thing from Hoskins in about 3 minutes' time. We get a real nice shot here too of Masrani sort of standing in the window, looking out with the sort of reflection of the animal moving around in front of him. And as you said before, that you can obviously see a lot more than what the audience can, because we're being kept in the dark a little bit more, just waiting for the full reveal later on when it breaks out. But we get some back and forth shots as the animal moves through the trees, and Masrani sort of taking a couple of steps closer to the glass to see her, and we sort of get some of those sort of horror strings in the soundtrack start to build up as if an attack's anticipated, and it's something I was probably expecting in the theatre, for her to maybe not lunge out and hit the glass again, but just a jump scare. I was waiting for a jump scare to happen.
At the same time, I think that kind of would have felt a little cheap, you know?
Mm.
I mean, Jurassic Park's... I mean, yes, it has had jump scares, like, for example, the raptor behind the bars, but at the same time, I think that not having that, not depending on them, kind of makes Jurassic Park a bit of a stronger in the horror genre in that way, you know?
Yeah. I think it was just the main... Everything's so fixated on the animal moving around. It just made up make a good point to do it, where everyone's fixated on the screen. But as the minute ends, Masrani breaks the silence and says, "Oh, it's white. You didn't tell me it was white." Which,
oh my God, Karen, you can't just ask why she's white. If anybody's familiar with Mean Girls.
Oh, there you go. I was not. I wonder how much is getting sent back to Masrani in reports, or whether he even checks in or anything